Welcome, everybody. This is Bob Ost, and this is our weekly TRU Community Gathering. And this week, we're going to be talking about, well, every week we basically talk about some aspect of what we're dealing with in COVID. We can't ignore the fact that we're socially isolating. We don't have the opportunities, we don't have the resources that we have had in the past to create live theater. We can't even do that. So we have to make do with what we have, which is virtual presentation. It's frustrating, and one of the reasons why we do this weekly meeting is so that people can come together in a room and feel like you're not alone, feel like you're not doing this all by yourself. But I always remind people to think of the long term. We have to remember that it's better to be safe right now so that we have a longer term recovery later. We won't risk ourselves having to be going through this longer than we have to right now. And it seems endless. Be patient, be safe, socially distance. Let's not try to open up our country before it's safe to do so, and then pay for it later. So today is also a day for remembering 9/11. We will never be able to think of this date in any other terms. However, we have learned then, and we're learning now, that we get through things, we move on, we live our lives, and we create, and we go on and on and on because we have to, and that's why we're here on this earth. So everybody, I want to welcome Cheryl Davis and Emmanuel Wilson to a discussion about the impact of this pandemic on writers, other than the obvious, which is basically frustrating us all and making us wonder how to get our work produced and what to do and how to be creative when we're faced with so much challenge right now. So this is going to be a discussion, I think. You never know what these discussions actually become, but it's going to be a discussion about writers from the point of view of Cheryl, who is the general counsel for the Authors Guild, and Emmanuel, who is managing director for the Dramatists Guild. So someday somebody's going to have to tell me the difference between a general manager and a managing director. But for now, I want to introduce our panelists, and let's start our conversation. Ladies first. Cheryl.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Hi, so I'm Cheryl Davis, and my usual spiel is that I am a mild-mannered Midtown Manhattan attorney, but right now I'm a mild-mannered Mount Vernon, New York attorney, since I've been up here since the world shut down at my folks' house. As Bob said, I'm the general counsel of the Authors Guild. That is my day career. By night, I am a playwright, librettist, lyricist, and TV writer. I wrote last season's Law & Order SVU. I wrote an episode, and I'm working on my next one now. Recently in the theater area. Actually, literally today, I was working on a commission for a VR play and also a short musical theater commission that is going to be videotaped and shown, and later this fall. So kind of addressing the fact that we're not going to be in live theater for a while. So what do we do to get around it and still express ourselves creatively?
I also want, at some point, we're going to talk about any specific legal issues that are coming up for writers during this period, and how this is affecting contracts and how people are doing business in this world. So we'll get to that later. Does anybody not know that Cheryl Davis is the co-founder of TRU? So I just want to make sure everybody's clear about that. Oops, you dropped out.
I said Emmanuel doesn't know that. He's nodding.
Okay.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yes, Cheryl and I had this wacky idea together 27 years ago, and here we are.
When
yes.
I was in Europe, Bob.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Cheryl, you're having a little problem with your mic. I just want you to know that.
I am?
Yeah.
Should I lean more? Okay.
Okay, that's better. Now, okay. Emmanuel, I know you going back quite a while as well, so we're old friends. So
Yeah.
tell us the path that took you to the Dramatists Guild, because you didn't just pop in as the managing director.
Oh, well, you know, I didn't. Hi, everybody. It was so wonderful to um, see everyone and get to hear about everybody's projects, all the same thing in this business, right? I started out as a young performer when I was probably about 13. I started with, if anybody's familiar with, I know Ned Ginsburg is, TRU Youth Theater. And I was an ensemble member there, and I grew up and I fell in love with the administrative side and producing and directing. And then I went off and started my own theater company for a number of years. And then I had kids and stepped away from the theater and came back to the Dramatists Guild. And I actually started at the Dramatists Guild as the director of membership and sort of moved into the managing director. It's been a very interesting time for members and non-members alike, and I'm really looking forward to sort of talking to you guys about it.
Well, that's why we're here. So
Yeah.
yes, I'm looking forward to that as well. Well, where can we start? Let's start with how your guilds have adjusted, how long it took them to pivot. Obviously, things have to be done differently now. Cheryl, what was the process for the Authors Guild? When did you kind of get real about it and say, okay, we got to handle this, we got to deal with this?
I think it was actually a Friday the 13th. I know it was like Friday, March 13th. I think when the world shut down. And we had already been preparing for that. So we'd already made sure people that could work from home, since we were trying to think of going more virtually anyway. And then we get the email saying, okay, so our offices are closed. We're all going to be working virtually. And we set up, what we do now is we have twice a week Zoom calls, staff Zoom calls. So we get to see each other's faces twice a week, and we just call, and we have conference calls, we have emails, etc., to just try to stay on top of things. We had a big problem in that our gala, which was about 30% of our budget, was scheduled for May of this year, and we knew that clearly wasn't happening. So we pivoted pretty darn fast to make it a virtual gala. And it was a very interesting experience, because we ended up having people attending from all over the country, clearly, who couldn't have made it to the live gala. And it was set up, instead of like the whole presentational program where you have people talking and speeches and videos and stuff like that, it was really a conversation between two well-known authors. And people felt like it was a fun, kind of like more intimate, ironically enough, gathering, because they see the authors, like Margaret Atwood and Judy, I'm terribly
Bloom.
sorry.
Bloom.
Thank you. Judy Bloom. And it was just great watching these two women talk, and they were joking about like, yes, and I don't have to put on my heels. And it just felt like a conversation between friends that we were privy to listen to.
I remember that moment.
Yeah, and people posted, it's like, well, this is so cool. And we ended up we got donations. We did not get as much as we would normally, but we have managed to pivot and gotten a lot of very kind donations from people. We also got a PPP loan, which has helped keep a number of organizations afloat during this time period.
Including us.
Yeah. So that is what we've been doing. A big pivot we had to do is with our programming. Well, we do a lot of online programming anyway, because we're a national organization, but we've had even more programming, and we actually did a survey of our members to find out what it is, how hard have you been hit by COVID? And people responded that actually there was a number, like out of almost half of the 1,000 respondents lost some income, big surprise. But we have a group called the Authors League Fund that usually provides grants to authors in need. And usually it helps 60 to 85 writers a year. This year, they received more than 630 applications after May 13th. And they've managed to help about 250 writers, but just there are a lot of people in need. And another one of the things, I almost forgot, one of the big things that we did was we have a COVID-related website page on our website, which I'll put up in the chat, which has this like grants available for writers and other things that writers might want to know. about where they can get money, how they can help, what they can do. We're focusing also on a lot of authors have lost their book tours because nobody's touring, so they're trying to pivot to do it webinars, and try to also have authors talking in our communities about, can we set up a virtual book festival for our members? So people are very flexible and are trying to adjust. And one of the things you mentioned before about how somebody mentioned about how we are open to, because of the Zoom world we're in, people from all over can attend things. We had one of our chapters, our North Carolina chapter, our co-ambassadors set up a series of programs on Black children's book authors, which you think would be a niche. They speak. But they set up this series. We had 3 programs, which you think like normally it's North Carolina based children, Black children's book authors. How many people are going to attend? We had about 300 people signing on to these 3 separate calls, and just the exchange of information and the creation of a resources page. And people are hungry for information and to connect with each other, and they're using this digital world to do it.
I need to take a step backward because I should have done this before. Cheryl, would you explain what the Authors Guild is and who belongs to the Authors Guild? Because I've got a room full of playwrights who are scratching their head going, do I belong? Should I belong to this?
Well, you could. What the Authors Guild is, essentially we are for, and I try to figure out the best way to put this, for non-performance writing, essentially published writers. We have full memberships for people who have got a traditional book publishing contract or who have made a certain amount in self-published works. And ironically enough, Emmanuel, I don't know if you know this, but once upon a time, back in 1912, your guild and my guild were the same.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we are a subcommittee. We started as a subcommittee of the Authors Guild. We're family here. I got that. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, we are family. Absolutely. Yes.
So that's a good time for us to pivot to you, Emmanuel. So tell us a little bit about the Dramatists Guild. I think more people here know about the Dramatists Guild, but give us a little bit background, and also the same question that I asked Cheryl. At what point did you know that you had to make a pivot, and what point did you know that you had to change the way that you were doing things, and how did you adjust to this ridiculous time we're in?
Well, the first question, just going off of what Cheryl said, if people don't know, the Dramatists Guild started as a subcommittee of the Authors Guild, and then in 1919 really became its own organization. And then for 100 years, we've been advocating for playwrights, composers, lyricists, and librettists, for individuals who write specifically for the theater. And so I love that you brought that up, because it just warms my heart, because I was like, oh, I'm going to share that. You shared it first. So one thing, the pivot that you're talking about is actually something we did about a year ago, actually a few years ago. We've been moving in a direction, because obviously our office is in New York. We're in 1501 Broadway. And for a good amount of time, we were perceived as only a New York City organization, which is actually not true. We have 9,000 members all over the country, all over the world. So for us, we were making a big pivot to make sure that all of our services really served our full membership, that we were serving everyone, no matter what state, no matter what region you were from, or even country. It was really important. So we moved our database, our services, we moved a lot of that stuff into the cloud, especially our online classes and such. We wanted to make sure that our services were available to everyone, that you didn't have to be in New York to get that. So then when this happened, we were actually able to move very quickly. I think it might have been on the same day, the 13th. It was like, all right, we're closing up offices. Great, done. And everyone's working from home. And because we're all in the cloud, it's just so much easier to go ahead and do that. So we made that pivot a long time ago. The pivot that we're still in process with is, with Broadway shut down, for us as an organization, we derive a good amount of our income from writers who are produced on Broadway using the approved production contract for first class productions. And it's been a challenge for us. Thankfully, we've made good decisions, so we're financially healthy. But one thing we want to make sure of is that we're here servicing our members everywhere, because obviously Broadway is shut down. Schools are shut down, and a lot of our members derive their income from performances that are licensed in schools and colleges and from all forms of places. And because people can't come together, you know, there's an entire line of income for a majority of our writers that have disappeared. So one, as an organization, we want to make sure that we're stable enough to be here for our members in this current time, and also react to what's going on. We have a separate organization called the Dramatists Guild Foundation, and through this pandemic, they've given out over $500,000 in emergency grants. And you do not have to be a member of the Guild to apply for an emergency grant. That is available to anyone who can prove that they are a playwright, composer, lyricist, or librettist, because people are in need. So the pivot that we're trying to make is making sure that for the next year, that we can actually maintain our services at a high level, because members are going to need us. Because as many of you well know, theaters are making a huge pivot to live stream. And this live stream conversation is not going anywhere. Even when theaters come back, it is going to stay a part of the conversation, because theaters have now realized that this can be an additional source of revenue for them, but we just want to make sure it's an additional revenue source for you guys as well. So we have a lot of work to do.
Are you guys creating specific templated agreements for live stream presentations?
We actually created a number of months ago a live stream addendum, and that's for any contract that you actually have. You can just add it to your contract that allows people, that gives them permission to go ahead and produce your work in live stream. We're also, we just got approval on a new contract. It's called a digital rights contract, and it's for a contract specifically for nonprofit theaters that, for work that's generated specifically for digital. So there is, again, there's a lot of conversations that are happening, because the live stream debate has opened up, you know, where does that work apply? You know, is it film? Is it theater? So
well,
we're actively in that.
I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I will say that there are other unions that we have to deal with, including SDC and
absolutely,
Actors
absolutely.
Equity, and not everybody is always on the same page.
That's all I'm going to. Yeah,
that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, they're not on the same page. But for writers, I think there is a deep conversation in terms of, are you under a union contract with the Writers Guild of America? Or are you still a sort of independent contractor? So we're really working through a lot of the definitions here through that. But yeah, there's a whole conversation with the unions, and no one's on the same page.
And I do want to go back to one thing you said before, because I want Cheryl to also respond to what we're talking about now. You said something about the income, the revenue stream for Dramatists Guild being affected by the fact that there are no Broadway shows. Can you explain how is the connection made between the writer and Dramatists Guild? Isn't it simply dues?
It actually isn't simply dues. When the organization was created, of course, Broadway, you know, back in 1919 was the only market. That has since changed. So members of the Guild for quite a number of years were the only ones sort of funding the organization through a percentage of their profits by using the approved production contract, which really holds the line to make sure that producers don't go too far. It really sort of sets a standard that the writer themselves sort of accepts. I would say about 50% of our income is derived from the contracts used for Broadway first-class productions or tours. If anyone is a Dramatists Guild member and you pay $130 to be a member or $90 to be an associate, your dues are heavily subsidized. And one thing that we're trying to do is make sure that members that still want to stay a part of this organization know that we're going to be here, even if you can't pay your dues. So that's the pivot that we're making right now. We want to make sure that our industry knows that we're still here, our members know that we're not going anywhere, and people can trust that even if they don't have any income, we're going to figure out a way to take care of them and give them the services they need. But that is a fact that some people believe that minimum basic dues cover our full income, and it actually doesn't. Yeah.
Sure.
So thank you for bringing it up.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that could use some clarification.
Yeah.
Cheryl.
Yeah.
I wanted you to respond to what we were talking about before when I pivoted to the dues question. In general, Emmanuel was talking about how the pivot. You already talked about the pivot, but how do you see this affecting your members? What is happening to your membership as a result of COVID?
Well, fortunately, our membership renewals, we've managed to maintain them reasonably well, knocking a lot of wood on that. But as Emmanuel said, membership dues, we love them. We love our members dearly, but they don't pay, they pay a fraction of our bills. And we actually have an affiliated organization, the Authors Guild Foundation, and that is the 501c3. The Authors Guild itself is a 501c6, but the Authors Guild Foundation is a 501c3. Through which we get most of our government grants, etc. And through the foundation, that allows us to do a lot of programs open to authors of any kind, non-members. In fact, last year, when we could travel, we were traveling to cities all over the country, giving boot camps on how to help writers in underserved communities. Writers in underserved communities market. How do you get an agent? How do they review contracts? We were giving them boot camps on the business of writing. That's really what we focus on. And in a more global sense, in terms of how do we help our members, one of the big things we do is lobby. We have a lobbyist down in DC. And because of everything that was happening with PPP and can freelancers get money under the Pandemic Unemployment Act? We were lobbying to make sure that people did get paid and that laws are clarified, and we're still down there because, as we all know, it's a murky mess. So what we're trying to do is make sure that that writers and freelance artists are addressed in any sort of financial relief programs that come out there. We're down there in DC, and we are trying to do it in NYC as well, but it's a little even murkier in NYC.
Emmanuel, is Dramatists Guild doing similar work, obviously?
Yes, actually, we hired Jenna Crisfante, who is our Director of Community Engagement, about 3 years ago. And we're actually in the process right now of meeting with senators, bringing our writers to meet directly with senators, because we need people to understand that a lot of our members have mixed income. Right. So that's, when we're talking about losing your income and you already have income, there's a bunch of income you've lost, and we have to get people's mind around this. For writers, just, if you don't know already, writers are not employees. If your work is done at a theater, that theater is not employing you. That theater is licensing your work so that they can produce it. And then that's how it works. You are an independent contractor. And depending on how people file their taxes, many writers do it in many different ways. But we need the government to sort of understand that, because as an organization, writers are not, the dramatists are not allowed to unionize.
And the reason you have to lobby for this is because the Department of Labor is not completely on board with this concept. They fight tooth and nail the concept that any artist is an independent contractor. Where are we right now with that fight, that conversation with the Labor Department?
Well, one of the things that we are actually focusing on, and admittedly it's a long-term goal, is to be able to allow artists to collectively bargain, because right now they're barred from doing that by the antitrust law. And that's what we're trying to make the Department of Labor, make Congress understand that not everybody is Lin-Manuel Miranda, not everybody is John Grisham, not everybody has leverage to be able to truly negotiate a good deal for themselves. And that's what these guilds and these organizations can do, but you gotta let us do it. And you have to allow us, like the Authors Guild, to go into a publisher and say, like, this should be the minimum amount that a person should receive for a book of this kind. But we're not allowed to do that now. Publishers go, no, no, no. If we talk to you about setting terms, that's a violation of the antitrust law, which it currently is. So that's what we are trying. We have a long-term effort. We've got draft legislation to try to get an exemption. And Emmanuel, Ralph was doing this some years ago too. So
yes, I remember. And we worked really hard. And if anybody's in New York State, Chuck Schumer shut us down because the Broadway producers went directly to him and then they took it away. And we spent a good amount of money trying to make that change. And again, if you're a writer, when you go into this industry, that is the change you feel. That is why from theater to theater, the pay rates are so different. That's why, the contracts are so different. Like Cheryl said, there are standards that we can't enforce because of antitrust laws. So the only way that we can do it is by you as a writer going into that space and actually advocating for yourself. And that's really the thrust of the organization, is really making sure that you are as educated as possible. Even if you have an agent, you can have the best agent in the world. You are still the CEO of your business, and you still need to know what is going on, what's the deal, what are they taking, what are they asking for. You're running your business. There is a myth in our business that once you get an agent, everything sort of shifts over. But I promise you, as Cheryl said, Lin-Manuel Miranda, he may have a paid staff, but they're still his staff. And I promise you, they're meeting regularly to talk about what's going on in terms of what are people asking for. And he's the person that says yes and no, not the agent. So that's really important to know.
Let's go back to something you said earlier about freelancers being able to apply for loans from help from the government. Can you tell us what are the steps that somebody would need to take? Where do they go? What do they do as a writer in need of some sort of financial help?
Well, the PPP loan specifically is really to cover employees. So if you'd have to have your you'd have to have your own LLC or S corp in which you are paying yourself. And there are a number of writers out there who do have those sort of organizations set up for themselves. So we help walk them through that process.
It's also pandemic unemployment, which is a moot point now. But what should people have done like 3 months ago?
Well, you really have to go. Depending on the state that you live in, you really have to know what's going on and see how they are expressing those. Those exemptions, or they're letting go of them, or they're enforcing them. It's kind of insane because it is really state to state. And I've got members who from Florida took them 2 months to sort of get in contact with anybody. I've got people in Idaho who were like, oh, it was easy. It's this has been a trying time for a lot of people, and trying to get people to understand how writers are classified and should be treated in a moment in a pandemic has been difficult. But there are organizations fighting on your behalf to make sure that you can get what you need. But it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
What, if any, specific progress has been made? Has any been made yet, or it's
in regards to
incremental? And in terms of fighting for the artist's right to negotiate as an independent contractor,
to collectively bargain, as we said, that we're in the initial stages of that, and we're more hopeful about that now than we have been in years, because Congress is looking at the antitrust laws. They're looking at Amazon, they're looking at Facebook, they're looking at these huge tech entities with a little squint in their eye. So we feel like now is a time when Congress may be more willing to consider this request, whereas before they were kind of like, no way.
And specifically, we as writers, what can we do to help you? I mean,
Well, what we do at the Guild is when we have, essentially, because we were lobbying to set up a Small Claims Copyright Act, which would help not just book authors, but playwrights, etc. What that would do is set up a small claims copyright court, because right now copyright is literally a federal case. And what this would do would set up a small claims court where you could be an individual, if their work has been taken and their copyright infringed, they could go virtually and sue for like $2,000 or some smaller amount. They don't have to sue in the six figures to be able to pay a lawyer. You could represent yourself, and you could do it all online. And we've been lobbying for that bill. And what we did in that part, as a part of that process, when it would come to different levels of voting, and we would say, oh, we send out the blast, essentially saying, okay, this is coming up for a vote. Write your representative, click here to find out who your representative is, to tell them like this is, we want you to support this.
So we need to be on your email list.
Yes, you need to
All
be on our
Okay.
list. But also, and to be wary of what's going on out there. Things like piracy has been running even more rampant in this period, which is a royal pain. And essentially things like Internet Archive set up their national emergency library, which just, they took books, they copied them, and they released them to everybody on creation. And there was actually a lawsuit about that now.
Oh boy. I just want to say to the room that if you don't have participants window open, you should open the participants window, because it'll allow you to make a virtual hand raise. I see a couple questions in the chat. I can go back and try to fill them in, but it would be easier for us if you would virtually raise your hand, and I can call on you. We've talked about a tremendous amount. I can't imagine that people don't have any questions. We've covered a lot of ground in a very short time here. I guess, what were the other things I wanted to ask you about? I think somebody was asking specifically, what are the services that you offer? Can you break them down one by one? Both of you, Cheryl, you can start.
Okay.
To members, these are member services, of course.
Yes. Well, for members, one of our primary services is for full members. We provide free legal advice. We will review your contracts. We will not negotiate them for you. What we will do is give you feedback. These provisions are good. These provisions, this provision is lower than industry standard. This is what it should be. So we'll give you that information that then you can go back and negotiate with. There are agents who are members of our guild as well. And there are, as a part of our community, you can meet and network with lots of different folks who do different things. We have more legal information available to members. We do webinars on marketing, we do webinars on self-publishing. So there are various educational elements that we provide just to members. We've got, model trade book contract. So say that if you are in the process of getting an offer for getting an agreement for a book, and you don't want to come to us for whatever reason that might be. But we've got a template contract. We have several template agreements out there that full members can get access to and use to look at these agreements and go, oh, wow, no, you're asking for this? No, you shouldn't be asking for that. That's not right. So we do that. And with respect to our we also have emerging members, and we have student members too. And they don't get the legal review services, but they do get the help with marketing. They get the access to the general legal information, the marketing information. We have website, we have blog posts. We have our bulletin, which comes out 3 to 4 times a year with articles on topics about like what do agency contracts look like. And we've got a lot on self-publishing, what they call hybrid publishing as well. So we provide a lot of information out there, information and lobbying. As I said, we go literally down to DC and fight.
Which is actually
that's a service.
That's probably the majority of what you do, and it's what we're least aware of as writers, as innocent, uninformed writers out here. Emmanuel, same question. I think some of it's going to be similar answers, but just
actually, yeah, very similar. I mean, our really core service is contract review. We review unsigned contracts and give you business advice. That is a service that is available to all members. whether you are a member or an associate, regardless of the level you are at in your career. And the difference, just so everybody understands, a member is someone who is produced or published, and an associate is someone who has completed a script or had at least a stage reading of their work. So we do make that distinction there, and that's why there's those two different price points. But contract review, the templated contracts, access to our lawyers on staff, access to our article archive, which, we produce the Dramatists magazine about 6 times a year. And so we have a huge library of articles on every sort of topic about copyrights, subsidiary rights. You can sort of go down the line. In addition to that, we have now taken our resource directory. If anybody used to buy the paper version of our resource directory, which we've been printing for about 20 years, we've put that entire thing online, available to all members, where you can go ahead and look at submission opportunities, theaters, grants, fellowship opportunities, retreats. We really keep that thing as up to date as possible and really rely on you to sort of share additional information. We also have an amazing event calendar because, again, we're a national organization. So we have a regional rep program where we have volunteer writers who are really on the ground in their community, serving throughout the country and making sure that, there's a connection between groups, because we may be a national organization, but there are different things happening in different markets throughout the country, and we don't want to treat it all as one complete market. We have to understand what's going on locally. That's really important to us. So yeah, that's it. And then all of the other stuff that we have, which is on our website and free to view. If you're a member or a non-member, I can definitely send the link to everybody. So yeah.
Do put the link into the chat. We have some hand raises. So Emma Palzere, what is your question?
Well, Emmanuel just covered it. I was going to give a shout out to the regional rep program. I've been a Dramatists Guild member for a long time, and am honored to serve as the regional rep for what's called New England West, which is all of Connecticut, Central and Western Massachusetts, and Vermont. So any Dramatists Guild members, I really encourage you to, go to the Dramatists Guild website, find out who your rep is, find their Facebook group, and join it, because there's really interesting stuff happening around the country, and connecting with other writers is so important. And
connecting with anyone is so important right now.
Yeah, and often the regional rep events are not restricted to DG members. Kind of depends on what the event is, and of course they're all virtual events right now. But and also the website is just an incredible resource, and the Dramatists Guild has done a phenomenal job during the pandemic to just make resources available and information available to people. So great work, and I'm honored to be a regional rep. So check your region out.
Thank you, Emma. Murray Davis.
I want to say I'm a proud member of the Dramatists Guild myself, so yay, Dramatists Guild.
Yes. Always happy, yes.
Now, this may not be a question for you, but that's one of the reasons I'm taking the master's class, to find out what maybe it is. The play that I'm working on, we just changed the name, and I was helping to redesign the logo, and I said that I wanted to change the type to Calibri for varying reasons. It doesn't matter why. And the playwright, we're talking, and she said, you have to get a licensing. You have to clear that, because I come from the magazine world where you have the right, you don't have to clear any of this stuff. Do you have to have rights? And maybe this falls under one of your areas. You have to get a licensing agreement to use a font that you're going to put for the title of a play.
It depends on, if I can just jump in here, it really depends on where you got the font from. There are a lot of fonts that are free and easy to use, but there are fonts that are specifically created, and there are services where you can download fonts where you pay a monthly fee and have that license for a particular use. So it depends on the font and where you got it from. That's the thing.
The computer.
Yeah, the computer. Is it on your computer? Is it there?
It's on everybody who has the software.
Yeah.
Mac.
We have Calibri.
Mac, do you know the name of the font as we get into
Calibri.
Calibri.
Oh, you shouldn't. Oh, it's Calibri. Calibri is a web font. You should not have to pay any licensing fee for that. That is a standard web font.
$3,000 saved. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. There's a number of web fonts that are just open source for people to use, and
Okay.
just to make sure when your email opens up, it's proper. That's why it's installed on everybody's computer.
That's what I thought, but I figured you're talking contracts, licensing. I figured
Yeah.
maybe.
Right.
Thank you.
Now,
One-
if you were dealing with a font that an artist specifically created and you went
Okay.
to their website
That makes sense.
and you downloaded that without their permission, then
Yeah.
yes, you would have to pay that licensing fee and see whatever agreement they would have to make sure that you could use it in whatever form you're using that.
That
So,
makes sense.
again,
Okay,
yeah.
It didn't make any sense. Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much.
The one thing I would add is that some contracts do provide that a font, like the title and or the playwright's name must be in a certain size in
Right.
connection with marketing. So that I don't know if that's a concern, but then you would have to look at the contract and see what it says with respect to that.
No, this was just having to do with the use of that particular a font, and that they apparently had an experience with that. I never have, and I just figured-
It's not an issue with Calibri. Anything that's a free web font or something that comes with your computer, you own it. I mean,
Okay.
you don't own it, but you have the rights to
Right.
it.
You can use it.
Okay.
Mag-
When
we
I
have a-
when I was in private practice to create our logo, we hired somebody to create a font. So
Right.
then we had to periodically re-up and say, okay, now we have permission to use the font on the website when we got the website.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Magali, come in and say hello and ask a question.
Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Emmanuel.
Oh,
So I have a question. I'm an actress, playwright, producer, artistic director. I've become multi-hyphenate. And our theater, we produce new works written by Caribbean American writers. And we produced an event called a Reset Series with 2 other theaters. And our goal is to publish a selection of the new plays.
Mhm.
And I joined the Dramatists Guild because I thought I'd be able to get answers on how to do so effectively. And it's more directed toward the playwright. Is there an organization that's directed to the new theater who wants to self-publish and wants to make sure that I have an attorney developing our contracts, but I've never published before. So I'm basically feeling like I'm paving pathways by myself. And I was looking for an organization that would be directed towards someone who's self-publishing other people's work.
Well, there's, I think it's the IBPA, indie booksellers, etc. So it sounds like you may be looking for like a group of small indie publishers. They wouldn't be able to help you in terms of like licensing fees, like if you want to charge licensing fees and what might be appropriate.
No, we're giving that to the author. All we're doing is seeking ebook and printing publishing. And they're keeping licensing, they're keeping all those other copyrights. We want everything to go to the playwright. We're supporting the voice of people of color. Our writers, the event featured BIPOC writers, and not enough of our work is being published. And enough teachers have approached me saying, do you know where I could find works by BIPOC writers? I'm like, okay, I know places, but we need to really support these writers by giving them a means by which to make an income from their work if that ever occurs, if they ever get produced by their organization.
Magali, do you know Yvette Heiliger?
No, I don't know Yvette Highlander.
Should be an email. She may have some information about this.
Yvette Highlander as an H-I-G.
Yeah. So
Heyliger. I mean, I'll know who it is. So
Okay,
I'll put you together.
great. I really appreciate that. And thank you very much for
and Magali, I'm sending you my email address too, because I think I probably know of like indie publishing groups. I think would be able to help. So if you can send me an email, find me.
Okay, great. I will do that. Thank you so much.
Well, Arcade Green has come up with a controversial question.
Was a lightsaber and a gun.
Wait, who's
A lightsaber and a gun?
Oh,
That
that's my
sounds-
child. It's fine.
Oh.
She said, it's okay. Everything's fine. No, we're all good. Children are playing. And
Are those
I
the
will
Christmas
quietly tell her to not be speaking during this time, but it's fine. Thank you.
So, Emmanuel, here's a question from
Yeah.
RK. We can get into a little bit of murky water here. What is the Guild's position on directors wanting creative royalties for developing projects?
The general answer is no. The other answer is it really depends. There are individuals who have made that decision, depending on the kind of collaboration. But the work is yours, And if anybody is a member of STC, I mean no offense. Directors have tried in many for many a year to make that a permanent thing for, especially for first class productions. So again, that you are your own business owner, and that is a choice that you have to make. But the general thing is to say no. Because then we're talking about what kind of production. So if we're talking about, and again, I don't know what the specific deal is between, for Hamilton per se. I would imagine they may have worked out something in terms of how that production, was developed, but it's also now a first class production that is on Broadway, even though it's not performing, and have 4 different tours. So there's a large amount of income. The problem is, and this is why the APC holds the line, if you are producing something at a community theater and you get a licensing deal, and then the director's like, well, I made you, you're a star, and I'm going to give away my royalty. How is that going to affect you for the rest of your life? There's a certain precedent you have to be careful of. So that's why the general answer is no, but then it also depends on the level of production. Because writers have made that choice, and that is a personal choice that they have that right to make.
One thing I always tell writers is have the conversation early. If
Yes.
somebody's working with you and they're giving you dramaturgical input, be grateful. Don't assume anything about that. Don't assume that, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They may not see it that way. So you need to say to them, I appreciate the input, and I think you're really smart, and these are great ideas. What do you expect from me if I use your ideas?
Well, actually, let me just jump in on that, because even in a collaboration, if someone gives you an idea, it's actually, you make the choice whether or not to use it, right? You're the person that's putting into effect. So again, the entire idea of collaboration, because you have to remember, a director has the ability to do a production and then go do another production and then go do another production. They can direct God only knows how many shows in a year. A writer really relies on that one production and hopefully many more productions of that work, depending on if people are interested and they get a licensing deal. So your window of income is actually much smaller than theirs. And again, a lot of us get emotional and we're like, this is my friend and this is it. That's why we have contracts. That's why we define things, as Bob said, early in the relationship. So if someone gives you an idea, that's great. You're in rehearsal. Any idea that somebody gives you, if you implement it, it's yours because you've made it a part of your script and you've transformed it into your work. So we don't live in the world where it's just because I gave you an idea that I own the 0.5% of your script. It doesn't work that way at all.
Cheryl.
Also, as a matter of copyright law, ideas are not protectable. What is protected is the expression of the idea. And that is what you're doing as a writer. People put ideas out in the ether all the time. You have to take that thought and express it, and that is protected by the copyright law.
Right.
I come across this a lot. Well, not a lot. I come across this occasionally with writers who become very protective of the work, especially when we do the speed date. They say, well, what happens if I pitch my work to a producer and they wind up doing something like that later on? So first of all, there are many versions of ideas that are out there, and the producer could already be working on something that's similar to what you're pitching. It really is the expression that matters. Your personal voice. It's your voice that is protected, but not your idea. So I ask writers to be a little bit more flexible about that.
Right, and this is why it really is your responsibility to understand copyright. You don't have to be a lawyer yourself. Right now at the Guild, we're in Copyright Advocacy Month. You do need to understand the basics of copyright and how that affects you as a writer, because there is this idea that anything that someone gives you the script belongs to everybody. But again, your script is an expression, right? And that is what's protected. So it's your responsibility to make sure you know your industry. So when you walk into a room, sometimes you're going to deal with someone who doesn't know the industry and actually doesn't understand how your part of the industry functions. So it's really incumbent upon you to protect yourself with knowledge.
Cheryl, I want to come to something that you and I talked about a while ago. It's a very hot button topic. What are the implications of New York State's strict interpretation of labor laws on writers? We talked about the fact that it could be interpreted as when a writer is published by a company, by a publishing house, the publishing house is their employer, and
it's less likely for a book and a fiction like that as something that you come to the publisher with and you have already created. I think it's unlikely that that's going to be deemed a work made for hire. What gets deemed work made for hire is stuff that you would create, like, I guess because somebody tried to do this with me. It's like, oh, we're commissioning you to write this, therefore it is a work made for hire. And I go, no. But that is a way that people try to go about. He can try to go about making a writer an employee. And I will tell you that the big difference between our two guilds and the Writers Guild of America is, in addition to the fact that TV and film writers get so much more money, they get so much more money because they are employees of the production houses. And as employees, they get collective bargaining, and they also give up their copyright. They do not own the copyright, the company does. So with respect, one of the big problems I have had with the New York Department of Labor is with respect to actors, I believe, because they view the actor as an employee of these little off Broadway companies that can't afford to pay employment, pay all the other forms of insurance, pay minimum wage, etc. Because that's just not how the economics of theater works. Yeah, black box theater works in New York, but and I've gone to Department of Labor to try to argue this, but they say, "Look, nope, you tell the actor to come in, you tell the actor how to do their job, you tell them when to come in, they're an employee." He's like, no, that's not how this works.
Right.
I know, and I've had this conversation with them also. I had about 4 years ago, I had this conversation. And I think that's one of the areas where we have to really aggressively advocate and try to change that perception the Labor Department has of our business. They just don't understand the business at all. So
that's something theater lobbyists should be working with New York State to do that. I don't know who that would be. That'd probably be Equity, I would guess. Would be, well, I guess Equity. No, Equity is concerned if they could get their actors, their members paid minimum wage for all their gigs, they'd be happy. But I'm trying to think, because that's the indie theater community, I don't think has the money.
But Equity does take the position that in showcase situation, the actors are they're not employees. Equity does not. Sorry, you go.
I'm saying if they do take that position, they should be up in Albany on this.
They should, but I don't know whether they're advocating or not. It's a big issue. It's a big sword of Damocles that's hanging over theater. So that's a great note to end on. Let's see, Dr. Sue, what did you have to ask?
Yeah, I want to ask something about, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is a situation that came up for me. Writing the songs for my musical Switch, I was working with an arranger. It was a work for hire, and he put his name on the lead sheets for my song. I mean, I wrote the words, I wrote the melody, I wrote most of the chords, and he had some ideas for the arrangement, and I carelessly submitted them for copyright, and a few of the songs which had his name on it, and the copyright refused to copyright my songs because his name was on it. So now I'm going to redo the whole thing, not use any of his arrangements, pay the fee again, and submit it without his name. I hope they take it. I think.
No, why would you? Wait a second. If he just put it on as the arranger on the lead sheet, or as the writer, or just his name?
He put it on as the arranger, but the Copyright Office would not take it.
Because you're copywriting the arrangement.
The arrangement, I think, probably was their argument, is that you're copywriting his specific. You're trying to register copyright in his specific arrangement.
Copyright the lyrics in your melody.
Yeah, I think maybe I accidentally checked the box where it said arrangement or something like that.
But also, Sue, if you had a contract that says work for hire, you can submit that as an exhibit to show that you own the rights.
No,
What is work for hire?
copyright. The writer always name is there. You can own the copyright. You can sell your rights to license and stuff like that. But whoever does it, it's always theirs. They might not be able to get the royalties from it. But the name doesn't go away. It's just like the patent inventor. The inventor is the inventor. Even if you are doing it as a work for hire, a company might own the rights to it, but your name appears as the inventor.
Well, I think I better redo the whole thing. I mean, I don't even want to use his arrangements. I want to redo the whole thing without his arrangements. It seems, and he was.
So Sue,
Yeah.
if you were submitting your work and his arrangements were in the work,
Well, his little was a little bit of a piano arrangement.
Okay, just don't do that. Just don't do that. So resubmit without his work being part of it.
That's what I think is the best thing to do, and just
That's to say, then your copyright isn't tied to the arrangement that you submitted to the Copyright Office.
yeah, I think that's what I have to do. Can I do it as a new work, or do I have to mention that it was a previously submitted work or something?
No, because you're submitting a new version of a work. So you're not even amending your copyright because they rejected it. So you're submitting.
So I could just call it a new work.
Yeah, a new, presumably unpublished work, and just submit it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so guys, we're at 6 o'clock. I just want to say that we've drifted far afield from the pandemic, but it's actually healthy to talk about things and not even have pandemic being one of the variables that we're dealing with. So we've talked about a lot of what your guilds do. I think it was very useful and very helpful for a lot of people. Got some great comments in here. I want to give my weekly pitch. We do this for free, and we love having you all here. And you can come for free, absolutely. But if you would like to help us keep going and support us financially, any little donation will always help us. So I'm not sure. Yeah, Jay is going to put in the chat the donation link and also the membership link. We're $95 a year for membership. We love having members. It's another one of the basic revenue streams that we have is membership. So thanks for being here. And I'm going to do breakout rooms.